Welcome back to Rated Radio with your hosts, Rayburn Alexander and Shane Wyndham. Rayburn, what's going on in your world?
Not much, just the usual. We'll be doing more traveling for work, so that's a plus, but more on that later.
Okay, so you're going to talk about it later, so I shouldn't ask you about it. You brought it up in the intro, but I don't ask you about it right
I'm
now.
going to tell everybody more about it later, but just know that y'all wish your coworkers were as cool as mine because one of them surprised me with a trip because I felt the need to pay for karaoke when everyone was in town last month and wouldn't let anybody pay me back. So my coworker surprised me with a trip.
See how much better that is than more on that later? We'll talk about that later.
There'll be more on that later. Trust me. What's going on with you?
I survived World War III in my mother's neighborhood.
Yep.
4th of July is always wild outside of city limits in a neighborhood full of disposable income. But that's all I've got. Roll the intro.
All right, Shane, what bullshit did you pick for us this week?
Songs for future generations?
I
wouldn't call that bullshit.
I had no idea where to even fucking start with this list.
Good.
This is the hardest list I have ever had to put together.
Really?
Yes.
I had a very easy time with this.
I will tell you this, I just put it together 2 nights ago. And usually I'm really, really good about getting those top 10 lists dished out first. This one, it was a doozy.
Let's see. Let's take your pick first. Let's see what happened.
All right. First on my list is The Last 10 Years, Superman by Kenny Rogers. The year is 2006, and K-Log takes us on a journey as he describes what society has had to endure recently. Really heartfelt, and if you've lived through it, you'll more than relate. And if not, maybe you'll learn something.
K-Log.
K-Log.
Sounds like terminology for a Kellogg's cereal turd or something. I ain't done nothing but eat Kellogg's for the last week. Come look at this poop I took.
Come look at this K-Log I took. What's first on your list?
This is The Life by Dream Theater. Message here is a simple one. This is the only lifetime we're certain we'll have. There may never be another. Waste, therefore, as little as you possibly can on the concept of any next or previous lives. Where you do afford time to such notions, do so with your loved ones in mind, helping to ensure you leave a better world for them, as have countless generations of humans who came before us.
And sit on your mama's lawn and watch World War III with your family.
Yes, highly recommended.
And watch a bunch of dumbasses almost blow up a pool.
Or an entire
neighborhood. Oh my God. All right. Next on my list is 2002 by Anne Marie. Another description of what it was like to be in the early 2000s, but this time in love.
So you're going for a snapshot in time?
Yeah. Well, at this point in my list.
All right.
More to come.
All right. We'll see. More to come.
More to come. It's my favorite expression this episode.
I guess so.
I'm alluding to everything.
I keep trying not to harp on it because there's nothing that annoys me more when I'm listening to something and someone saying, more on that later. Well, I just want to turn your shit off right now.
Well, it's a good thing you're not actually an active listener, so...
Marketing people.
But then again, I choose to annoy you every episode. You're welcome.
Last Generation by The Rasmus. This song provides a vision of what the songwriters assume the last day for that last generation will look like. And one of your primary goals in life should be to ensure there is no last generation. Understanding and adaptability lead to survival. So it is my hope that an ever greater majority of us welcome advancement while ensuring the safety of our consciousness. Let us avoid the end this song affords us.
Spaceman, tech-driven.
Tim Tebow to Jesus Christ.
Next on my list is Good Old Days by Macklemore featuring Kesha. We all will reach a point where we look back on our lives and remember specific times that were the best. The tough thing, no one tells you to appreciate them a little more when you're actually living them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Know Your Rights by The Clash. It's common to hear people proclaim that the societal improvements we enjoy over that of those who came before us must mean that we're entitled when we continue pushing for a reduction in human suffering. And fuck that noise. This song takes aim at the inadequate nature of what we accept as rights, and what a sad state of affairs that this song is still relevant nearly 30 years after its release. We can and should do better.
Agreed. Wholeheartedly agree. Like the deep dive.
Today's going to be a little rocky. Again, it's for future generations, so if you're here and you're living and you're pissed off at some things that get said, sorry. We are going to talk about AFI and Dommin today.
Yes.
That's going to be really, really nice.
Yes, I promise there will be some music talk in this episode. Next on my list is Children of the Sun by Billy Thorpe. Space age Mad Max-esque jam. Who knows where society might be headed? Maybe Billy was on to something.
Maybe.
I
don't know if I know the song, so it's hard for me to say.
He sounds a lot like Billy Squire in this song. I literally thought it was Billy Squire, but it's cool. You'd like it. Next for you?
Death from Above by Thrice. Our government illegally murders civilians en masse at a rate that most would find astounding if they only had exposure to such facts in a substantive way. But our news media does a piss poor job of feeding us more than American excellence propaganda. Our military budget is greater than the next 10 largest armies in the world combined, and it is the greatest line item paid for via federal income taxes. Drones kill far more innocent civilians than they ever do those bad guys deemed worthy of murdering without judge or jury. Other countries haven't attacked us on our own soil in more than half a century, yet we take it upon ourselves to occupy and police many parts of the world. At some point, we really have to begin pushing back against the implications of these war crimes our country commits in the name of its citizens.
Oh shit. We getting real.
Again, it's hopes for future generations is what I'm going for today.
I know. I got the point of your list. But to lighten it a little bit.
Yes, please.
It's Earth by Little Dicky. This may be a stretch, and Shane may thoroughly disagree, but this track is, I dare say, the We Are the World of this generation.
Yeah, we joke a lot about me not liking Lil Dicky's other material.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really listened to Lil Dicky's other material.
He doesn't really have a lot.
I sat through like a triple video series. Y'all showed me at one point, but otherwise, I don't think I'm really experienced.
He also has a show on Hulu called Dave that you might actually really like.
Okay.
So just throwing that out
Hulu.
there.
All
Dave
right.
on Hulu. Not saying you have to watch it, but maybe pay attention.
I think the worst is over, by the way, of what's coming out of my mouth today. So.
I think the worst is yet to come for me.
All right.
So there we go.
I like it.
We're going to balance it out.
Killer of Giants by Ozzy Osbourne. A song about nuclear weapons and how they shouldn't exist. Sorry, future generations, but it looks like ours isn't making any progress with regard to their eradication.
Yep.
Anyway, that's the first half of our list. Let's talk about AFI.
Yeah, let's talk about AFI. Who's driving this magic school bus?
I think I will.
All right.
I'll go ahead and drive today.
You drive that big disco big rig, man.
And before we get into it, can I ask, you mentioned during the last episode that you are strictly a Miss Murder era. Does that mean that's the only real experience you know is radio hits from that?
Yes.
Sort of?
Yeah. 100%. The only other exception that I knew from what we covered is Hope You Suffer.
Okay.
And that I heard from you. So
okay.
This was a new thing for me.
Yeah. It was an interesting era too. Just so you know, I've been a fan since right around the time Total Immortal came out, which was a ways prior to that. And originally I went into the discography and started going backwards.
Okay.
Before the new material pushed me forward.
Okay.
I think the first thing that I bought is the first album that we're covering here, which is The Art of Drowning from the year 2000. This was my middle pick.
This is my bottom album.
Out of the 15 tracks, I gave 13 fives.
I gave 4 fives.
My top track was The Despair Factor.
My top track was The Days of the Phoenix.
And my bottom track was Battled, which is the hidden track.
And my bottom track was A Story at 3.
Just to be clear, the hidden track here is not the one I was used to.
Okay.
It's not what was there whenever I picked it up in stores. Anyway, this was the first punk album I ever bought, and it set one hell of a high bar. Its gothic themes, melodic intricacies, furious drums, vocal harmonization, and lyrical originality have seen it remain one of my all-time albums for 20 plus years now. Most who know AFI from radio and video know a more pop-laden style. This is rougher, faster, and more bombastic, a life-changing spin in my opinion.
Well, Shane pretty much hit the nail on the head for me. This is punk, which is not something that I am used to them sounding like, or the genre that they seem to ride in. Lyrics are difficult to understand. I really struggle with some punk lyrics because they're so difficult to understand. I think we touched on that a little bit when we were covering The Clash. Fast-paced reminds me a little bit of The Offspring. Guitar and drums are the standout.
Okay.
So
can't argue with that. Apart from criticisms of the album or your opinions of the album, what I keep thinking over here is, and it's personal, it means nothing to most listeners, I'm sure, but the fact that you called yourself punk
I know.
as a youth.
I know.
And you were very unexperienced with regard to certain elements of punk.
100%. But then again, I say I was punk back then. I think I fall more in the genre of like emo, like alternative.
It was
emo.
lighter. You could say punk. It was just a lighter 80s era, like beach punk sort of.
But when you think back on what I actually knew of, what I thought I knew of the music genres, I didn't start to actually listen to anything my parents or anyone around me said until after I went through that 12, 13-year-old phase where, of course, I thought I knew everything about anything. And yeah, I'm fucking stupid.
Oh, at least you said it. Next album we covered was Sing the Sorrow from 2003. This was my top album.
This was also my top album.
Out of the 14 tracks, I gave 14 fives.
First perfect album of season 5.
You had to wait 3 episodes.
I did. I only had to wait 3.
You?
I gave it 6 fives.
Respectable for you.
You're a dick.
My top track was The Spoken Word and or This Time Imperfect. They're both within the same track, which, interesting story, if you owned the CD back in the day, it was 3 songs in that one track. It was But Nowhere Is Home, The Spoken Word, and then This Time Imperfect.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm an idiot. I remember these things.
Why are you an idiot for remembering those things? I love that you call yourself an idiot within the same 5-minute span that I call myself fucking stupid.
It's just weird how it changes on Spotify and, streaming services these days. And it's interesting to me here because they actually cut it to be a hidden track within one track. I don't know.
Well, at least you knew what the hell you were listening to.
I did.
My top track was This Celluloid Dream.
My bottom track does not exist.
My bottom track, because I'm an actual human being, is Death of Seasons.
If it makes you feel better, I have had times where I've wondered if I love that song as much as I know I love that song.
That makes me feel a little bit better. Why don't you talk about the album, Shane?
Okay. I have a tendency to forget just how good this album is. The guitarist and vocalist are having a nonstop melodic affair here, and it's obvious why that resulted in their rise to stardom. There's more goth, less punk here, and the other 2 members aren't equally showcased like they were on the previous outing, but they're still playing together better than most groups ever will, the gold standard.
This album gives me major Lost Boys vibes, which is funny because they're often made fun of for having a vampire fetish or vampire rock persona. This album is still punk. Beats are more infectious. Sounds a little like young Metallica, in my opinion, and it turns a little more alternative by the end.
Third album that I went with was Burials from 2013. This was my bottom album.
This is my middle album.
Out of the 13 tracks, I gave 10 fives.
I gave 4 fives.
Top track was The Conductor.
My top track was Heart Stops.
And my bottom track was Wild. It had some poor mixing choices. I think that's the one where the vocals are in and out of the front, and I always like vocals to be present in the front of a track.
Are you ready for my bottom track?
No, but give it to me.
The Conductor.
God damn, I wonder
he's
sometimes.
so disappointed in me.
Anyway,
I still gave it.
It doesn't matter.
I still gave it a 3. I didn't give anything on this album below a 3, if that makes you feel at all better.
Nope.
Okay.
I remember this album showing up just as I'd begun thinking the group was done making music, and I think it properly addresses many complaints I've heard about AFI over the years. It's mellower, and the vocals are more accessible, though their signature darkness remains. While I do think the album is flawed in spots, it made obvious that AFI has so much left to offer. Each member brings something obsession-worthy to the table. Their sound is always recognizable, and I hope they keep putting albums like this out.
The vocals on this album for me are about 10 times better. He's looking like, yeah, I already knew. More emotional and toned down. Think The Cure meets Manson, in my opinion. Still more alternative rock, and in ways a little bit sexier.
I really can't wait to hit you with some of their early work. It's going to be such a pleasure to see what you think.
For disappointment purposes or what?
I think the struggle to understand vocally what they're saying is really bugging you. And I think that's what I was getting at. It bugs a lot of people. So if you're one of those people, this is a great album to start with.
Okay.
Some of their earlier work, they were very punk.
So surprised in that first album that we covered. I literally turned it on and I was like, wow, like this is AFI, because I was so used to their later stuff. And it almost even sounds like they changed singers, even though I know they didn't.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. A couple of notes that I have. Shane, do you know what AFI stands for?
A Fire Inside.
There you go. He knows what he's talking about, folks. They got their first big mainstream break with, like Shane said, Miss Murder. A lot of people know them for Miss Murder, but yeah, they have a lot more shit going on than what everybody thinks.
And they had some fairly popular singles before that too. A lot of people hate this group, and I think it's because the group chose some singles that aren't reflective of most of their music. They also had a brush with pop rock right after getting big. Said folks are missing out on some amazing stuff. The music makes me feel like I'm kissing someone deeply in the cold rain.
Okay.
Do you have other notes?
No, I'm imagining getting kissed deeply in the cold rain.
It's so creepy to do this podcast with you sometimes because we're related.
Nobody's... Okay, I'm not implying with you. I'm just saying I'm trying to put myself... Every time you say how the music makes you feel, I try to mentally put myself there so that I can see if I agree or not, which I hope that's what listeners do too. I don't want to kiss you and madly and deeply do in the freezing rain.
Sometimes it gets in a place where I feel like the only comparison I could draw at the moment, because this is where my brain goes, is like if I was hosting a podcast with a friend and we were talking about dicks. And
which we do from time to time.
I mean, if it was a male friend and we were talking about dicks and part of the podcast made us have our dicks out routinely.
Okay.
It would just be very strange.
Okay.
I hated that we didn't get to cover more of their discography. I may not love every evolution they've undergone, but I'm curious to see what my co-host thinks of the less obvious album picks. And honestly, just love getting to listen to music by one of my personal faves. I haven't mentioned before now, their new album is out. And I chose the albums that I did because I think there is a core of representation for AFI that most listeners should be familiar with. Whereas if you picked up Bodies, the brand new album that just came out, it's very artful.
Okay.
I think a lot of people aren't necessarily going to understand it. I'm still trying to digest a lot of it. This is one of those groups that takes chances on occasion.
Yeah.
And I almost always appreciate what they do. I may not love it like I love this core material, but I'm so glad that they keep that ability to push boundaries for themselves.
Well, you also can agree with the whole doing things for the sake of personal self-expression and art.
Yeah.
And not just, I don't want to say sell out because that term is used a little too loosely, but you can relate to doing things that are, I don't know, I guess more self-expressive and not giving a shit about what other people think about it.
Yeah.
You're doing it for yourself.
They're making art. And the type of art that they make does have some very real consistent themes, and they come back to those, they circle around to those, and I think that's why I love it. I don't really know what comparisons I could draw here, but there are a lot of groups out there, I'm sure, who do, on occasion, take a chance. It's just rare that most of those groups come back to their signature style so often.
Yeah.
And AFI does.
Usually an artist will find a niche and ride that wave till the wheels fall off, you know?
Yes.
So yeah, it's always really refreshing to see a group or individual get back to their roots in a way. So I can't disagree, and I'm really curious to see what they have to offer later on down the road because they are back in the jar.
Let's take a break. You have a song recommendation for us this week, Raven?
I do. It's Baby Don't You Go Go by CeeLo Green and Rare Essence. Released in 2021. I know, Shane, I sent you some 2020 stuff from CeeLo that came out that I had never heard. This track has a jammy horn section, funky as hell. And from CeeLo Green, we expect nothing less.
At a Wham cover?
I don't know.
Okay.
Somebody let us know. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
No, that's wake me up before you go.
Okay.
Go. No, okay, there we go.
I don't be knowing.
No,
It just sounded familiar, and I'm like, wham!
Yeah, no, it's not a wham cover. This is solid, as they say.
My recommendation is Chaos and Earthquakes by Nonpoint. Just a hardcore alt-rock jam I bump on occasion. If you ain't know, now you know.
You bump on occasion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What you be bumping, Shane?
Chaos and Earthquakes by Nonpoint.
All right, moving on to my plug. It's Hogwash Your History. This podcast focuses on a comedic and informative deep dive on all things historical. The hosts offer a lot in ways of fun, conspiracy theories, historical figures, mythology, and so much more. You can find them just about anywhere, so step into the magical time machine and give this one a listen.
You lost me at history.
You like conspiracy theories
And not really anymore.
Okay, well, you think
fun.
You know a person.
It's fun to see the conspiracy theory and just wonder, what the fuck?
Well, you might not appreciate this podcast, Shane. It's hosted by two theater nerds. So there are voices and scenes.
Again, you're still talking. You said theater nerd and I was gone.
Oh, God. Check out Hogwash Your History. My co-host is a freak of nature, but you'll like it. Trust me.
I was just trying to give you an opportunity to say Hogwash Your History again.
Yeah, thank you for...
It's a way to plug your plug again consistently and get it in people's heads, right?
Okay, yeah. Go ahead with your plug so I can shit all over it, please.
Well, it's not a plug so much as it is a bit of humorous advice. If you're a homeowner, name your house. Feels like every house they show on House Hunters has some goofy name given to it, most likely by the show's marketing department.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this led the wife and I to name our house as a joke. And it totally plays. 10 out of 10 would bang. Not my wife, I mean, that's obvious, but also the advice.
What's your house name?
The Nightlight Lodge.
Oh, that's cute.
What's your house name, Rayburn?
I haven't named my house. I wish you would have let me know.
And you say you work in marketing.
Oh my God.
What's going on here?
I do. You know what? I do enough marketing for the podcast at work. You're tiptoeing a line. I'm fixing to start marketing your life, sir.
If you don't know Dommin, here we go. Marketing my life. The fuck out of here.
Why don't I shit all over your profession now? Is this the portion of the podcast where I get to do that?
I'm just giving you hell.
I know, but I also think you shit all over your profession enough for both of us.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Dommin.
So, the first album we covered by the group a lot of listeners won't know.
And a co-host, apparently.
Had no idea.
No idea.
The first album is Love Is Gone from 2010. This was my top album.
This is my bottom album.
Out of the 15 tracks, I gave 11 fives.
I gave 5 fives.
My top track was Remember.
Ooh, that was my runner-up, but I'm so glad you talked about it. My top track was Making the Most.
And bottom track was Within Reach.
And my bottom track was One Eye Open. It was the short instrumental. While it was creative, it just sounded like noise. Would have liked a track there. Didn't give it to me.
This group falls somewhere in the spectrum of sound between AFI and Typo Negative. It also reminds me of what you'd get if the artist Him was American. Most of this album is re-recorded songs from their debut. While I may prefer the original versions, I like that the new material attempted to brighten the sound. This is romantic, often danceable gothic rock. The special edition bonus tracks are killer as well.
For me, this was like orchestral metal. Sounds a little like Trans-Siberian mixed with Volbeat. You know who Volbeat is.
I know who Volbeat is.
The vocalist. Major lead singer of Volbeat vibes. If you like Repo the Genetic Opera, this is definitely up your alley. Vocals are pleasing, sexy in a way, and it sounds a little bit 80s at times. Think The Cure.
Next album we covered was Rise from 2015. This was my middle pick.
This was my top album.
Out of the 10 tracks, I gave 4 fives.
I gave 4 as well.
My top track was The Quiet Man.
My top track was Next Day Apologies.
And my bottom track was There You Are.
And my bottom track was Damsel in Distress.
My feelings toward this album are completely at odds. On one hand, I think most choruses are punchy and effective. On the other hand, the music feels rather plastic and sterile. Even though some of the lead vocals present in a gimmicky way here, I bet most of this is owed to the basic nature of the musicians he's surrounded himself with. A disappointment, but not a total loss.
This is a little bit more metal, sounds a little bit more emotional, a softer direction, and it really sounds like Volbeat mixed with Foo Fighters for me.
Maybe that's the problem. I have yet to really get into a single Volbeat song.
Blue really likes Volbeat, and my dad really likes Volbeat, so I could not listen to Dommin without hearing the vocalist from Volbeat, which is not a bad thing.
I was going to say, people have showed me a few singles, but I don't see the comparison here. I'll throw that out there for what it's worth. So if you hate Volbeat, you might still like Dommin. And
yeah, I was going to say,
I may have just not heard enough Volbeat to actually be talking.
I agree, because I'm not a huge fan of Volbeat. It's not something that grabs me. I was a pretty decent fan of Dommin when I listened to it.
Okay.
So vocals are a little easier to understand, and this album is a little bit more fun.
I won't disagree with that. Last album we covered was Beautiful Crutch from 2016. This was my bottom album.
This is my middle album.
Out of the 11 tracks, I gave 3 5s.
I gave 3 5s as well.
My top track was The Scene.
My top track was Outer Space.
And my bottom track was The Flame.
My bottom track was Madly.
I understand why.
Thank you.
I also felt quite a bit better about Outer Space the first time I listened to it versus the second time I listened to it.
It grows on you in a bad way?
Yeah, it kind of walked back the other direction.
Okay. What is in the previous album?
No, just that song.
Oh,
just
okay.
Outer Space.
Okay.
I think it may be one of those things I love at times and I hate at times. I don't know.
Okay.
This is another contentious one for me. Here, the music, though still mostly too simple, is stronger, while the lyrics and vocals have a tendency to not gel. It's often like someone's riffing on that Every Time I See You Falling song from the 80s, while also trying to adopt the southern undertones you find in groups like Collective Soul. And it rarely works, even feels lazy at times. The highlight here is a lesser reworking of something off their debut. These tracks just needed more time in the oven, though, on the whole, and it has stellar album art.
I was not a fan of the album art, but I knew you would be.
Why?
I've never really been into
artful ladies on covers.
You're really into artful fantasy ladies on covers, so I knew you would love it. But it's just not it's not my bag.
Okay.
So
I think it was a nice representation of their sound.
See, I would have taken the art from the third album, put it with the first album.
Third album art with the first album's music.
Yes.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not crazy.
No.
Vocal change for this album? Probably not, but I added a question mark after that, so I have to say it like a form of a question.
It's like when I do my country accent on the podcast. That's what it reminded me of at times.
A little bit of a vocal change? Okay.
Okay.
More range, soulful vocals, experimenting with different sounds, a lot more toned down, but this is the most emotional installment for me. And it's funny that based off of what Shane has said in his notes about these 3 albums, the band has often stated that they are influenced by other bands such as Typo Negative, Rammstein, and Depeche Mode. Tell me that doesn't work.
It does.
With these 3 albums.
I mean, Rammstein, I don't really find that in their sound.
I think it's like the metal.
I don't really find metal in their sound. I find some hard rock, because again, I wouldn't call Typo Negative metal.
I don't think I would call them metal
Lamb
either.
of God is metal to me.
Okay.
It's complex. It's furious. It's in your face.
Okay.
None of this is that.
I think most people would categorize that first album as metal.
It's got some very beautiful,
Fantasy
dark things.
metal.
If you think of him as metal, HIM, that Finnish, I think, group, band, person, whatever it is.
It's a group. It's a group.
I don't know the lead singer's name, so if you're listening, you probably hate me now. But for what it's worth, that's what Dommin reminds me mostly of. So if you categorize that as metal, we're all just speaking over each other here.
Well, him is listed as similar artists to Dommin, so you
Makes
can
sense.
Yeah, I always check those on Spotify after I've done my notes just to see if I make any sense, and yeah, it makes sense. Him's there.
That first album, I mentioned the bonus tracks. One of those is a cover of I Just Died in Your Arms.
By Depeche Mode. No, not Depeche Mode. Cutting Crew. It's like the only thing they're famous for, I'm pretty sure. I think you're right.
But the cover is phenomenal. Their debut is on Spotify now. It's a CD called Mend Your Misery. it was more raw. I don't know we haven't covered that album yet, so I'm just going to shut up.
Okay.
The music makes me feel like I'm at a party for ghosts.
Okay.
And to be most successful in the future, I think that the group should take its time and punch hard at a more complex darkness. So if you really like Rammstein, go deeper, go more complex. Because I don't know, I really do think a lot of this is easily listenable. It's just one of those groups that isn't doing much more than recycling the sound of their debut.
Okay.
Often to weaken effect. A cool bark, but diminishing bite. And I've said a lot of negative things here, and I don't want that to take away from the fact that I think a lot of this, the fives that you'll find, will really, really appeal to you.
Mm-hmm.
Once you know what you like by this group, you will listen to them quite a bit. And that's why I picked them to go head-to-head against AFI.
They have what Shane would call strong fives?
Yes.
Got it. What was your first experience with Dommin? How did you find them? Because that's what I'm curious to know.
I think this was a MySpace group.
Oh,
Maybe it was MySpace days.
MySpace days.
And who knows?
Mm.
It could have been I was reading a review of maybe an AFI album and saw a Dommin recommendation, or just something that was randomly played to me on
LimeWire.
Pandora. Not LimeWire. This is why you got viruses back in the day.
100% true.
Let's just let LimeWire play whatever it wants for me.
Yeah, you think you want to be entitled and you're living in your fast-paced world? Remember the LimeWire days. It'll bring you back down to earth just a little bit more.
It only applies to people who had shitty internet and no virus protection on the computer.
Listen, Shane.
Times was rough in the
It was
sticks
either
back
that
then.
or cable, and we had cable. We had shitty internet, but cable. Anyway, are you ready to move on?
I am.
Actually.
Wait,
hold on. Let me take it back a little bit. Who won for you this week, Shane? We always forget to do that.
AFI did by a mile.
AFI by the skin of their teeth.
So it was close.
It's 3.7 from both. Literally, Dommin got a 3.72. AFI got a 3.77. But AFI did have 2 more fives than Dommin. So I think going back, I think I'm more apt to listen to Dommin.
That doesn't surprise me. And it's not a knock of your character because I listen to both of these groups.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that dark, gothic style. It's just that I also really like punk music, if you can't tell yet. And AFI has that in droves.
And I am a spooky girl. And I want to go to a party with ghosts. So
I think if we're talking about a true versus here, a lot of what Dommin does, it feels like something's written around a particular thing. Okay. Mostly the vocals, I would guess, but it sounds like keys, sometimes guitars. They have a particular riff and they've written a song around it. And it just still feels obvious to me, which is why I think they need to dial it in a little bit.
Okay.
Just take a little more time. AFI, I can't say that about. AFI, it feels like every member of that group is always on their A game.
Yeah.
Bassist, drummer, I notice all of that shit. Their guitarist is one of the most unique writers out there, and their frontman is delightful.
You look at their frontman, and that is not the first word that would come to mind. Looks wise,
I think he is. I think what he writes with regard to lyrics, the persona that he presents, the way he's managed to not let it go to his head, they really do a good job of giving equal face time to every member of the group, and they all deserve it.
To be fair to Shane's statement, I'm imagining 2000s AFI, like early 2000s Miss Murder AFI. I think that was 2000s.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Didn't mean to step on your toes. Are we ready to talk about the next half of our list?
I am.
Okay, why don't you go first?
So my 6th pick is Pariah. The group is Dredge. This one takes aim at religious fundamentalism as well as terrorism. Like it or not, religion aids in the creation of terrorists because it's not rooted in things which can be proven. This isn't me knocking people who take comfort in believing their loved ones live on beyond death, or me implying that all terrorism begins and ends with religion. Far from it. But if you're part of an unindoctrinated set of future humans, let me be the first to point you down the scientific methods road and save you all that time on religion's dead-end street.
Dude.
That's because if I could go back in time, I wish someone had shown me, like, no, there's a whole world out there that bases knowledge and furthering our understanding upon evidence.
Yeah, I get it.
Purely.
We've been watching Castlevania on Netflix. We watched all of it. And I cannot tell you how many times Blue and I have looked at each other and just gone, imagine how far we would be advanced as a society if we weren't so fear-mongered by churches way back when.
Yeah.
So, and I know that is probably a really controversial thing to say, but there are a lot that we didn't understand and a lot of fear that was backed by the church.
And to play devil's advocate, I think a lot of plenty of religious people that I know, they do not look at the worst of any of the messaging. They look at the best.
Yeah.
They take the best away.
Yeah.
And they try to be really good people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those people are just good people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not necessarily to do with a book they're reading, trying to teach them about concepts of an afterlife or anything like that. I think you are just good people.
Yeah.
So anyway, again, I'm not here to knock religion.
No, me neither. There's a lot of, I cannot it's the good, it's the black and white, the good and bad in everything, in everyone. There's good and bad representations of any organized anything, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in my list.
Next pick? I want to hear what you're talking about later. I just want you to talk.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to talk. It's Yesterday by Boyz II Men. Even though this is a Beatles cover, the words still ring true even when sung by the genius 90s R&B stylings of Boyz II Men.
So much better.
Mm-hmm.
So much better.
I know. I figured you would like that.
Thank you, Beatles, for writing that song, though.
Quit shitting all over the Beatles. Tell me your next pick.
It's Complicated by Propaganda. Thinking about the world is rarely going to be so simple as black and white. There's so much gray area, it's difficult to even begin to fathom. Sometimes there's no easy way or answer. So do your best to avoid those filters of thought which block out the full spectrum of complexity life affords us. Think deeply, take your time, and be whoever the fuck you feel you were born to be.
That's a hard one for people to realize, Shane.
What do you think about episodes like this, Raven, by the way? I'm not storytelling, I'm just spouting soapbox opinions to the darkness. Listeners, you are the darkness.
I think that episodes like this, while heavy, are refreshing because it shows us that we are actual people behind these microphones and that we do have opinions and beliefs and morals. And I think that, I don't think that this is a conversation for every episode.
That's a shirt, dude.
What?
I think that while I don't think.
Anyway, thank you so much, Shane, for that. I think that it's important that we have conversations like this, but they need to probably be few and far in between.
Yeah.
So
I like it as a palate cleanser, maybe a change of pace, a way to lose a bunch of listeners, I'm sure. No, I'm
listeners
kidding.
That we don't have.
I am getting more and more comfortable talking about things because I trust that more and more people in the world, as time goes by, I'm beginning to trust more that people can deal. And it's not my notion to push you away.
No.
I don't mind if you want to talk about these things back to us or write me personally. I don't mind. I can handle your opinion just like I'm happy that you can probably handle mine.
I think it encourages discussion, and I think that that's one of the things that is a problem. People hold up in their holes and they don't talk and they don't communicate as well as they should. And the whole point of us coexisting even, is that we respect each other enough to talk about these things. While we don't have to agree, that is completely fine. Let's still be able to have the conversation.
What's your next pick?
Next on my list is Remember When by Alan Jackson. This may not resonate with generations as a whole, but individuals will find these words true when reminiscing of early love.
Cool.
Thanks. Riveting conversation.
Sorry, I was just trying not to clear my throat right when you were talking.
It's okay.
Children of Planet Earth by Melody Sheep. This song includes the voices of those which NASA sent into space on gold-plated records on the Voyager spacecrafts. These voices well may outlive us all, and were meant as a way for other intelligent life to have some idea of who we are and or were. Not only do I recommend hearing this song, but also studying the genesis of these records, because both acts will instill a high degree of hope for our species in you.
How long would it, I wonder, take? I know that the concept of time differs in space, so something like us speaking right now won't be heard for, millions of years? Thousands of years?
I don't know these things off the top of my head.
Okay. Crazy. Science is crazy, man.
Yeah.
Next on my list is Shake It Out by Florence and the Machine. While I am just beginning to take these words to heart, my hope is that others find out sooner than I did that all you need to do is shake it out. Don't sweat the petty things. Pet the sweaty things.
Pet the sweaty things.
Never heard that expression?
No.
Pet the sweaty things. Don't sweat the petty things.
I like it.
Thanks.
We Won't Go Quietly by Tech 9. No evil has been abolished by our kind without a high number of voices speaking loudly against it. Your voice matters, and if you wish to change the world for the better, you must use it. You may routinely think your voice is unimportant in the fights you choose to take on, and in those moments, you could not be more wrong.
I was wanting to talk, but anyway. Next on my...
I wanted to talk.
I wanted to make a comment. Next on my list is Old Man by Neil Young. While this particular song reminds me of my father, my hope is that someone from a future generation, whether it be from my loins or anyone else, looks back on my life and sees themselves in my struggle.
Pork loins? What are we talking?
Pork loins! To my children or not my children. However, I influence the younger generation. Because I have nieces, I have nephews, I have people that I'm actively involved in their lives. My hope is that they look back on my life and realize that there are a lot of similarities.
But are you trying to say that your children will be pork loins?
Yes.
Okay, just clarifying.
Well, you know, Shane, I got this big nose. People often say I look like Miss Piggy anyway, so just call my children my little pork loins.
Damn, you just brutalized yourself twice.
No.
I got this big nose. People call me Miss Piggy.
They do. It's okay.
Although in certain circles, spank bank material.
And you say I make this very uncomfortable.
Big nose, Miss Piggy. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to have to scrub that from my brain. Can you move on to your next pick?
I'm not saying I'm part of the circle. I'm just saying it exists.
I don't know. You sound like you're a part of the circle. You sound like you be like as a Miss Piggy. Oh,
no.
God. Okay. I don't give a fuck. Let's go.
Each Small Candle, Live by Roger Waters. Most people who spout ignorance do so because they've touched something in the dark and been left to their own devices when it came to figuring out what it is they're touching. If you plan on doing away with said ignorance, start by shining a light on what it is others' ignorance has been blind to. You may find that some ignorance refuses to die, like some shadow you don't have enough light to eradicate, but eventually other lights will join you. And so it is that one little flame at a time will paint the big picture. And while we're here, I can't say it enough, Disc 2, Roger Waters Live in the flesh.
Oh, God.
Well, we got Bravery of Being Out of Range, Each Small Candle, Amused to Death, It's a Miracle, Perfect Sense Parts 1 and 2. Those are just mind-expanding songs. And if you're part of that future generation, don't let those slip under your radar. They're almost certainly going to be moving throughout the course of human history.
In case listeners haven't figured it out, we're huge fans of Pink Floyd. Piggybacking off of what Shane said. Next on my list...
Miss
Piggybacking over here. Next on my list is As Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke. This track is an encouraging ballad that makes us all, as a society, realize how much we have changed while simultaneously making us see that we have a long way to go.
This is a very serious episode, and for some reason, certain words you're saying are just buzzing the least serious shit in my head. You said simultaneous, and all that went through my head was Chef Aid's South Park album, and Chef, their simultaneous lovin' song.
Okay. I have no idea what you're talking about, but to lighten the heaviness of this episode, yeah, let's talk about South Park.
I just did.
Are we ready to draw?
I suppose I could see to that.
Okay, yeah. Do your job, man.
I don't have my jar. Please stand by. I'll cut all the jar noise here. How about that? Since I've got to stand up and go do all that crap.
Okay.
Hang on. Hold tight.
Okay.
And we have one of Sandra's top 10 artists. I feel like this jar really does show certain people love. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. No. So we love Sandra on this podcast, for sure.
It's kind of wild. We love all of you. Thank you for putting stuff in this jar. I'm sorry that I don't know how I keep drawing same people, but...
Well, it goes to show that everything is at random. So that's good, because I would think that if this was all fake, that we would add a little bit more variety. But nope, Sandra just keeps getting lucky.
Yeah, I want to make a joke there, but I'm going to avoid that joke. So,
okay.
Yeah, one of Sandra's top 10 artists here, it's Eric Church, who is a country artist.
Yeah, that's a name.
And I have... You don't know that name? You
Nope.
Never heard it?
Nope.
I don't know if I know much Eric Church. I feel like I've heard a song or two. I could be wrong, though.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have Eric Church paired up against Morgan Wallen, who is another country artist.
Yep, that's another name.
So next week will be names.
We'll be covering some names.
And those are country music names.
Okay.
So stay tuned. Pretty current country. Hopefully our list will be interesting for listeners who care nothing about country. So, Rayburn, the pressure is on.
We shall see.
Why'd you just look at my corner like there was a spider crawling up the wall?
It's a ghost.
And that's going to do it for this week. Hit up our playlist to hear all the songs we talk about. Get our full ratings, t-shirts, and bonus episodes at teespring.com/ratedradio. Guide what we listen to by suggesting new artists for our jam jar. You can still, surprisingly, send us voice messages on Facebook for a shot at being on the show. If anyone ever does it, I promise I'll try to put you on the show. Mm-hmm. Your support really is what makes or breaks us. So thank you for listening and sharing. And until next time, fill your world with music.
Pet the sweaty things.